Resume recording. Perfect. There we go. Welcome back, everyone, to Real Talk with the Sexperts and happy Pride Month again. So happy to see some new faces here tonight, as well as returning guests and our loyal Sexperts that, come to support us even when they're not on the panel. We love to see it. So if you're here for the first time, Real Talk is a live Q&A panel, and we have certified therapists and coaches, sexologists, and sex educators that rotate every month and transform conversations around sex, relationships, love, and modern intimacy. And tonight we're going beyond the binary, and we're going to be discussing labels and binaries and assumptions and exploring the spectrum of gender and sexuality, identity, and orientation. So I'm excited to see you all. I'm excited about this amazing lineup of panelists. The conversation is going to move quickly, so I've got the captions on for accessibility purposes. You might be able to turn those off as well. I'm not sure, but I'm going to leave those on for now. As always, you have access to the chat, so feel free, guests, blow up the chat with questions. We love hearing from you, comments, reactions. We'll be responding in real time, sharing resources, etc. there. So don't be shy. We really love to hear from you. I'm your host. For those of you I haven't met yet, Jamie Azar. I'm a certified sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and owner of Erotic Expressions. And I work with individuals and couples to dismantle shame and recenter pleasure and redefine sex, relationships, and intimacy beyond pressure and expectations with more permission, agency, and choice. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. I'm going to pass the mic over to Dominique. And panelists, you can just hop in when each person finishes. So thanks so much.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Dominique Oster. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified sex therapist. I'm from the LA area, but I'm currently in Santa Cruz and I'm about to be an immigrant in Mexico because we're moving to Mexico City early next year. So, yay, getting out of here. But in addition to that, what else? I am an adjunct professor. I teach human sexuality and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and sexually expansive psychotherapy, which is a course I developed and I love so much. And what else? Yeah, I work a lot with queer folks, queer, trans, polyamory. I really consider myself to be, you know, like an aficionado of all things that are expansive sexuality and expansive relationship types.
Thanks, Dominique.
I am James Mosley. My pronouns are he, him. Obviously black. I'm boy flux gendered, hetero flexible, non-monogamous, and I'm a human sexuality grad student at Widener currently and aspiring PhD sexologist. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Love to have you here. Thanks, James.
Hi, my name is Nishita, she, her pronouns. I am one of the first Indians to be certified as a sex educator by ASECT. You can find me in ASECT, but I'm predominantly a sex researcher. My research spans all across from neuroscience to anthropology to history to political science. What I'm looking into is how society, how politics influence our sexual behaviors, social behaviors, and artistic expressions. I'm currently working on what it used to be like for sex workers before colonization, during colonization, and after. What were their artistic art forms back then? So, hi.
Thanks, Nishita. Perfect, perfect.
Oh, I really like that research. I want to talk to you about that. Well, hi, my name is Jerry St. Louis. I'm not from St. Louis. I'm from a far worse place. I'm from Florida. I'm sorry. But I do live in DC now. I am a licensed independent clinical social worker and certified sex therapist, educator, and speaker. I primarily work with the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm the co-host of the Queer and Kinky Couch. Please make sure to follow and subscribe. And I'm also a doc student, and I am at the tail end of writing my dissertation on the evolution of sex education and how it includes queer people with disabilities, because um, I want to work in that field when I'm done. Thanks for letting me share.
We love you. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for being here.
Hello, all. My name is Jordan Costin. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker and owner of the therapy practice Affirmative Therapy of Northern Virginia, where we see clients of all types and creeds, as young as 6, as old as 64, seeing couples as well, but specializing in providing affirmative therapy. I'm also the founder of Safe Space Nova, a nonprofit that provides positive programming for LGBTQ youth. And I'm also the co-host of the Queer and Kinky Couch podcast with Jerry St. Louis. So yes, please subscribe and check us out.
We love the Queer and Kiki Couch here for sure. Always shout y'all out, I think, on every panel. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for being back.
Hi, my name is Quill. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. I am like a gender fluid trans guy person. It's really a lot of it's just vibes based, not even gonna lie. Um, but I'm a self-taught sex and kink educator. I'm looking into getting officially certified very soon. I am going through a lot of pretty like major life changes with, new job and relationships and moving and all of the things. So I've kind of taken a step back from creating like educational content and such, but I am so, so happy to be here. Thank you, Jamie, for having me back on, especially for Pride and also some topics in the future. Yeah, thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Glad you're back. Thanks, Quill, for being
Yes.
here. All right, everyone. Awesome. We're going to jump right in and get started with
Oh,
the first. Oh my God. I'm so
hi.
sorry. I'm sorry,
No, it's
Holly.
okay, Jamie. No, it's
I
okay.
love
Happy
you.
Pride.
Happy
Happy Pride. It's
birthday,
fine.
Holly. I'm so sorry. I'm off my
I'm
rocker
just
today.
playing. It's okay. I'm just sitting here.
I love you.
Um,
I see you.
I know I love you too. You're totally cool. Hi everyone. I'm Holly. I use she, her pronouns. Um, I have been working in sex education for almost 20 years. I currently own my own business. I'm the owner of That Sex Educator, and I am the host of Meet Me at the Spot Where Pleasure Meets Education podcast. I'm also a co-director and co-founder of Rochester's Sexual and Reproductive Justice Task Force. And I'm a mom and I'm a queer woman. So happy Pride, everybody. And super excited to be here.
We're excited to have you back, and thanks for being here. Love you, Holly. Thank you so much. All right, now we're gonna get started. I've got like 4 different screens out so I can see all. All right, so the first question: how can you go about explaining to your parents that your sexuality is fluid? How can you go about explaining to your parents that your sexuality is fluid? Remember, we're just going to use those raise hand features if something comes up. If not, we can kind of take some time to think about this too. Similarly, someone had asked, how do you navigate the desire to help others understand your identity? So, like whether it's relative to your parents or maybe your friends, how do you go about explaining to your parents or people in general that your sexuality is fluid? Yeah, Holly, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I would say, the important thing first is to recognize safety, your own safety, in this and what that conversation and should look like. Safety is obviously very important. Um, one of the things I always tell folks is like people are going to have questions, people are not always going to understand. People are going to make mistakes, people are going to slip up because it's a new process for them, even though it may be a process and a life um decision for you and a life and a part of your life. It's been that way as a part of your life for X amount of time. It's new for them to kind of figure it. So having some grace, but education. And like for folks who are not gender fluid, allies and things like that. And like even for me, like I'm pansexual, and so explaining to my parents, like, when I say I'm a queer person, what does that mean for me? And I'm 40 years old. I'm like, how old am I? I'm 40 years old. So explaining that to my family, like, what does it mean? What does queer mean for me? And why do I use that term for myself? Um, and so when people are asking questions, generally they're coming at it because they really want to learn. And so, yeah. But
Mhm.
safety, I think, is that number one key.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really helpful. Nishito, what would you add to that?
Well, I look at already existing ancient civilizations and what they have with this question. Because prior to colonization, we have had stories like these exist for a long time. We have had non-binary, gender-fluid deities who would have sex with each other whenever they would feel like and would pop out kids whenever they would feel like. Some of them would not be interested in having kids, but they're still having sex with each other. So many of these stories survive in our day as bedtime tales and as fairy tales. And they're constantly being quoted in a way in which I would think as how would a child understand this world? So perhaps for that purpose that they were sort of created in this fashion. So maybe there are some stories out there, and there are plenty of them, mind you, that you can, whatever you feel interested in, you can actually latch onto that story and ease the ice, like ease it in into conversation.
Yeah, thanks for adding that and, commenting on the erasure of people's stories and kind of the act of reclamation through that, like finding your sense of identity through other people's stories and then finding your own story within that, and that being an act of reclamation and undoing some of the erasure that's happened historically and currently. Yeah, thanks for adding that, Nishita. How about you, Quill? What would you add to this, or what new perspective would you introduce?
Yeah, I think kind of bouncing off what Nishita said about kind of like how you would explain this to a child. I think that that's a really good lens to come through it, not to infantilize the people that you are talking to, but a lot of people, as you know, we're coming into, especially from older generations who aren't used to, different terms and, are trying to wrap their head around especially, non-binary pronouns like they them, it's like they're trying to figure out what that means. It is really helpful to be very simplistic with it and not to again like infantilize or put them down, but to explain simply and straightforwardly. And sometimes you can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of what I was going to originally say as well. And I'm gonna at least reference this probably throughout the whole panel. But something that I feel like really strongly about is that labels are a very helpful thing, but they're not necessary. I think that labels can be super, super helpful in any, kind of uh, area. I'm disabled as well, so diagnoses, all of that. But labels can be very helpful in putting you kind of in an area. Or pointing you in a direction, but it can also be very limiting, especially if you get down to like micro labeling. It can be sometimes more exclusive than inclusive. And so I think it's really important to recognize that not everyone has to have all of the labels and fit all of the things. Like I generally just refer to myself as queer and trans because there's a lot of different things, that kind of go into who I am as a person. But it's not, as straightforward. And so I make it straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
You get to decide how much of yourself you can share, basically.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's all really helpful. I'm going to transition us into the next question. And this person was wondering about transitioning, and they've asked, what is the final decision maker for those who choose to transition into a new gender? So, for those who are transitioning, what might be a final decision maker for those who want to or are curious about or choose to transition into a new gender? Yeah, Dominique, what comes up for you around this? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll answer this question just because I like to yap, but this certainly is not
Yeah.
necessarily, my experience. But when I experience clients or folks who are wanting to change the way they appear, they're wanting to transition, kind of more in the way that they present in the world, this may be something that we've been knowing for a long time inside, right? Like I've had this experience of myself, and I think I would look and feel more like myself if I had this or had that or didn't have this or didn't have that, the same way that everybody else does, just without being under, a microscope. We all do a little, Botox or nip tuck or tummy tuck or all kinds kinds of things that are gender affirming care, because when we look in the mirror, the thing that I want to see about myself isn't there. So I think when we think about transitioning, it's not like a final destination, but it is this process of how can I bring myself a little bit closer? And if we take out this really like we're talking about challenging the binary. If we take out this binary assumption that transitioning is this final destination and I know what you are, I know what you have, then we get to move a little bit along that kind of constantly throughout our life. So it's not one place, it's a process.
Mhm. Yeah, and a spectrum and a journey is what I'm hearing from you as well. Thanks, Dominique. That's really helpful. Yeah, Jordan, I'm curious what's coming up for you.
Somebody who's worked extensively with clients who've been in transition, nobody can truly define what that looks like for you. You are the individual. So generally, what this process starts out as the social transition. Social transition is generally pronouns. It is clothing that matches what presentation you're most comfortable with, and names. So that's a good place to start. And from there, the way that I kind of express it or look at it for clients and to give them some perspective is when you go into a store, you generally want to try on a couple of different shirts, skirts, shoes to say, okay, what looks right on me? And oftentimes you have to walk around the store, or sometimes you'll even take it home and say, like, I got to try this on at home in the comfort of my own space and say, does this fit right? And when you know, and I know this is a bit of an abstract response, but that's kind of intentional. When you know, you know. But we all know that feeling when we put on that pair of shoes, when we put on those jeans, when we put on that shirt, it's like, oh my gosh, it took me a little bit to find it, but I love it. I appreciate it. I know that this is me. I'm happy to wear this. So you go along this process that's best suited for you, and it's very individual. We can't really speak to, okay, this is the mass way in which everybody can do it, because that's not how we look at the world, especially those of us trained in kind of like therapy and social work. It's you're an individual. So my goal here is to be the guide and help you discern when it is the right fit for you.
Hmm. Yeah, that process of self-discovery, and that deep innate knowing that this is me, kind of. No one else can really decide that for you. Yeah. Quill, do you have something to add briefly to this as well, or a new perspective?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit on because y'all said most of what I was going to say, anyways. But I think, especially when you come in with medical transitioning as well, like like everything changes, you know. And so I think it's really important to pay attention to what makes you feel euphoric and know that that can change over time and not, you know, feeling bad about that, and just kind of um, feeling what makes you feel you,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to have that change over time, if that makes sense. That's all that I wanted to
Perfect.
add, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it's beautiful. I love that note of like euphoria, similar to what Dominique said, like kind of coming into yourself. Yeah, and someone is saying in the chat as well, I love this. Sometimes transition stays in the inner world of the individual and never gets known by anyone else. Right. And not to invalidate that experience and to celebrate that as well. Others are saying it has to be a psychological adjustment. Nice. Yeah, thanks everyone. All right, we're going to hop into the next question. And this person is wondering about how to navigate your identity during second adolescence, or in other words, coming out later in life. Curious, James, what comes up for you around this?
Yeah, so I just from a personal experience, learning a little bit more about the options out there, more than what's, provided in Western culture. Even learning that I was boy flux, where sometimes I feel this percentage of like masculine and this percentage of masculine on another day, you know. I try to navigate that by understanding that 34 years of my life was me being conditioned by the dominant culture that I'm in. And so sometimes there may be feelings of taboo for myself and a lot of unlearning to do, but I try to give myself grace, basically. I think that's my answer.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. I think that's really helpful. Nishita, what would you add to that? What came up for you?
So I came out probably when I was 30. So pretty much part of my life is done and dusted kind of a thing. Um, and I guess it's got to do with the fact that this wasn't a topic of conversation from where I'm from. sexual identity, romantic identity, or your gender identity is not the majority of the conversation in social spaces. So it wasn't really on the forefront of someone's conversation that, oh, what is going on in here? What is going on in there? You're just living your life in a social space, basically. So um, given that scenario, it was like in my 30s when I kind of came out and I was like, oh, maybe I'm aro ace, maybe I'm gray sexual or gray romantic or something like that. But even there, it doesn't really fit in because it wasn't actually a sexual or a romantic identity for me. It was always in the aesthetics, it was always in the space of aesthetics. And it got me thinking more as to, okay, what's going on here? And it turns out I'm androphilic, that I'm attracted to masculine characteristics, but I don't really identify that with a particular type of gender. So I'm still coming into that. I'm still trying to make sense out of that because the language around there is very, very gender specific and not really rooted outside of the gender. So perhaps using language like philia as opposed to sexual identity or romantic identity will probably detach it from being rooted in a binary base.
I love that. Thanks for adding that, Nishita. I think that's really helpful. And again, just the education piece around that, the empowerment people can find in the language, in the identification, the disidentification of that. It's I love it. That was really helpful. People are saying they're learning a lot of new terms. Good, excellent. All right. Anything else there? Good. If not, I think I'm going to move to the next question. Awesome. All right. So this next person's wondering about pansexuality. And they have said, forgive me, but I'm still learning. Can anyone be classified as pansexual? So maybe someone could offer up a definition of what this is, and can anyone be quote unquote classified as it? Yeah. Holly, what's coming up for you?
Yes, that was all I was gonna say. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. Um, I I like the question. I'm gonna move away from like the classified as
Mhm.
for myself. I I always thought so I am pansexual. He said that wasn't obvious. But I always really thought like everybody just was attracted to everybody. And so I never really attached that label to myself. And I was, talking with my spouse and I like just was talking and they were like, "Did you just like come out as pansexual?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, that's a thing. Right. That's a term. Yes, I am." And for a long time I didn't talk about it like publicly on my social media because I thought a lot of people would be like, "Oh, she's just saying that because she's like trying to fit in with the LGBTQ plus community. She's doing it for the likes or whatever." It's like, "You guys, I don't have that many followers to be doing anything for the likes." So, but it took me a long time to kind of get over that imposter syndrome. So for me, pansexuality is having attraction to people regardless of their gender. And so, um, the perfect example, like the cliche example that a lot of people use from the show Schitt's Creek is like, not so much about the labels. So I absolutely feel that way. I'm just attracted to all people, all of the people. But nervous around women. So that is my whole thing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So if it's a label that and an experience of attraction that you resonate with, that you identify with, yes, but not something like we might necessarily project onto someone else, but might discover that we resonate with that through conversation with others, right? So that can be helpful too, is finding those safe spaces to explore those identities or have conversations around them. Yeah, Quill, what's coming up for you briefly to add on, and Nishida?
Sure. I think I also identify as pansexual queer. Again, it's kind of like the label thing that I was saying earlier. But I think it's important to feel, just feel out what's right for you. I've always said, I don't care about, the identity or the parts. Like if we vibe, we vibe. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how I see pansexuality. But also don't feel pressured to classify yourself, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. And other people in the chat are saying pansexuality. They like to use the phrase equal opportunity lover. Other people are reflecting on kind of the terms demisexual. and how that didn't really resonate at first. What is masculinity? What is femininity? People are asking because when I do the exercise, let's just say, sorry, to list fem traits and then compare it to the official list of masculine traits, it is 80% overlap. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, I think just going to debunk the binary, right? We've been talking a lot about the fluidity and the spectrum. Good. Nishita, anything else you would add to this before I transition to the next question?
Yeah, I was debating on whether or not I was pansexual when I came out as androphilic because again, the question here is the idea that it is a sexual identity. Am I really identifying with this and with this category because I'm sexually attracted to them? There are several different types of attractions that we don't really speak about. We have attractions like aesthetic, emotional. We have sexual and romantic, of course, but we are also talking about caregiving. We are talking about there's so many variations. There are like around 20 different types of intimacies that individuals can experience and attractions that individuals can experience. It boils down to what is important for you in your own relationships and how you would like to show up with it. If that falls within the category of sexual orientation, is what you think it is sexual orientation, then okay, then go ahead and use the term pansexual. But I tended to avoid that because mine didn't really fall into the
Yeah,
sexual category.
yeah, yeah, perfect. I think that's all really helpful. All right, perfect, perfect. I'm going to transition into our next question here. All right, all right. So a little bit of a different topic here and shift. This person is wondering about how do couples handle an imbalance of sex drive? So desire discrepancies in relationships, mismatched libidos. How do you handle that imbalance of sex drive, and are there ways to increase libido? Dominique, what comes up for you around this?
I feel like it's like on Jeopardy where they ask the question, you're like, I gotta answer it. I want to answer this question. Um, so I am a very much primarily like a relationship therapist, right? And I think even therapy, if you're in an individual therapy with me, it's still relational between us. And when it comes to desire discrepancy in couples or, relationship dynamics in general, there's so many different factors that I think people forget. They really go quickly to, is this an incompatibility? Are we not right for each other? Do we not like each other? And we forget that we have desire discrepancy around so many other things all of the time. But because we have this huge like, our ego is involved in sexuality and our affirmation and our validation and how, valid am I as a person is wrapped up in sexuality. If we're working with desire discrepancy with couples, we want to understand, well, one, what does it mean to you? What are you asking for when you're asking, do you want to have sex with me, right? Are you asking because you want an orgasm? Because like you're really good at that on your own. You don't really need me for that. Are you asking for comfort? Or have you had a bad day and you want oxytocin? Well, there are other things we can do to get that. Are you asking for play and fun with me? Are you asking to appreciate and worship me because you feel so attracted to me? And once we understand all these varieties of things that we're asking for when the higher desire person is asking to connect, then we can start to put in things in place and plans in place so that we don't feel the rejection of, oh, well, you don't want to have sex with me. But then we're also not like self-abandoning because I need to meet my partner's needs and I care about them and I love them, but I'm not in the same place. So then you factor in capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and all these systems that are making us like sick and literally dis at ease. Like our physiology and our stress response cycle is just not in that place. That's where desire discrepancy lives. So if we can externalize the problem and figure out what we're actually asking for, then we lower some of the pressure around sex itself and we don't end up having these kind of chronic fights that we get into. So many different ways. It depends what you're coming in with, and then that's the route we'll take because it's almost never, I just don't like my person anymore, right?
Yeah, that was all really helpful and comprehensive. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Nishita, what would you add to that?
I have a different take on it, and I'm going to come
Okay, yeah,
from a
thanks.
global south, and I'm going to come from a global south and an arrow ace perspective. I feel like there is no such thing as desire discrepancy. I feel like that's just two egos clashing with each other, trying to get their needs met and them not being heard. Now, we constantly categorize only a particular type of intimacy over the others, that there is some sort of a hierarchy in terms of our needs being met. Now, would there be a hierarchy when I've put in 20 different types of intimacies in the chat? You can have a look at it. Now, are we really looking at all of these types of intimacies when we're talking about desire discrepancies? Are we looking at into all of these things when we're talking about relationships in general? We aren't. We are only looking in terms of libido. We are only looking
Mhm.
at it in terms of sexuality. And quite at times, this conversation is also very political in nature in terms of whose sexuality gets prioritized. Why is sexuality being prioritized for certain bodies and not for other bodies? Why even sex? Why the act of penetration is more important than the others. So there are so many questions here that one might want to push back and ask, what do you mean by sex? What do you mean by penetration? What is going in? What is coming out? If it has got to do with orgasm, many people orgasm better in solo sex. What does that look like in interpersonal relationships? What is the difference between interpersonal relationships and your solo sex?
Exactly. Yeah, and that was similar, I think, too. And thanks for adding that hierarchical perspective and to echoing, I think, what Dominique said too, again, about the spectrum of intimacy and sex being one vehicle to meet our emotional needs, right? What are all of those other various ways we can meet each other's needs and having the education that it's not just sex or penetration or orgasm. Absolutely. I think that's all really helpful. Thanks, folks. I'm going to transition us into the next question. And this person is asking about STIs and how do we talk about STIs with new partners? I know we've talked about this on previous panels, but what's coming up for you, James, around this?
I think I'm pretty cut dry, I think when it comes to STIs and any kind of preventative measures in terms of sex. I before every new partner, I'm usually sending a screenshot, I think of my STD panel. Um,
Perfect.
so I think it should be something discussed like a headache is or the common cold, and something very abrupt and just direct.
I love
But
that.
would love to hear something different though.
No, I think that's great. Thanks for sharing. Okay, perfect. I saw a hand that went down. Yeah, anyone else come? So just being very direct, upfront, transparent. Hey, here's a screenshot of my panel. Like, yeah, absolutely. That kind of makes it easy, honestly. Kind of a little bit depending on the person's reaction, but just kind of being direct, being upfront. Yeah, Holly, what would you add to that?
Yeah, nothing major because that was so beautiful. But again, something I mentioned before that I wanted to come back to is that safety aspect as well about disclosure, safety for yourself. Um, and recognizing that there are lots of ways if you're not feeling safe to tell somebody in person about an STI status, there's lots of ways that folks can assist with that. I know every state is different. I know in New York, folks at the health department and things like that can help you with informing partners. I know the CDC a long time ago had something, but it's a federal government thing now, so I don't know what they have anymore on the CDC's website. But there's lots of ways to get support around having that conversation if it doesn't feel safe for you to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's all really helpful. Perfect. All right, I'm going to transition us into the next question. And this person is asking about coming out. Okay. And they are saying that coming out to them feels unsafe. They don't feel like they're completely out, and that they fear that the pride community might cast them as an outsider. So, what would we say to these folks? Jordan, what's coming up for you around this? Things?
I'm just going to start here. I really did not and have never liked the phrase coming out because essentially what that perpetuates is this idea. And I think it's something, I mean, I can't say this for fact, but it's just something that feels like the heterosexual community came out with as performance, right? So essentially coming out is saying, here's a stage when I'm at work. Here's a stage when I'm next family gathering. Here's a stage when I'm at part of some community event or at a church. So it's moving away from this idea that I should feel the need and overly obligated to share about something that is intrinsically personal for me and saying, where am I when it comes to my truth and sharing my truth? And I share my truth as I feel comfortable. For some people, that is a dialogue, that's direct communication with one, if not a couple of people. For other people, sharing your truth is another version is just living your truth. The common example I give is when you go to work at the water cooler, people are talking about, hey, I'm going to be staying home because my girlfriend is sick. The man might say that about his girlfriend. or me and my family are going to go on vacation, or I'm going to put a picture up of my wife or my husband and the kids. So living your truth is essentially just putting that up. There's no need for an explanation because you are living your truth and that is who you are, and there absolutely is no problem with that, and you can normalize that. From a safety perspective, we always want to encourage, if it is not safe, keeping that in mind and saying, what do I do to preserve my safety? So for a lot of youth, and I work with a lot of youth in the nonprofit space as well as in the therapeutic space as well, it is, if it is not safe, then let's make sure we're not having those conversations and see if there's something that can be done to increase safety, right? So maybe there's some educational aspects. Sometimes that means bringing parents into therapy sessions and doing what we need to. Safety is always paramount, again, especially for our youth and for other people in situations as well. So keeping that top of mind. But there is no need to come out. I just want to say that one more time. There is a where do I feel in sharing my truth and living my truth.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Quill, what would you add to this briefly?
I just put my hand down because I mean he
Oh,
said it
yeah.
perfectly, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, safety. I guess
Mhm.
one thing is I grew up in a very like high control religious environment. I had to hide my sexuality and my gender for a really long time. And when I came out, my parents did disown me. So it is really important to kind of take stock of where you are in your life and what you can and can't, kind of hold and making sure you're setting those boundaries.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ashita, one final comment, new perspective you'd add, and we're going to transition.
You have as much of right to visibility as you have to right to opacity. You don't have to constantly be legible for other individuals to categorize you into categories so that you are more comfortable for them to exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This
Thank you.
whole journey is very, very personal to yourself and your existence with the social lives that you create around you. So, in order for your labels to work, generally we have labels around for us to communicate. Nowadays, labels have become a categorization process. And because they've become the so called categorization process, it becomes very easy for the state to legislate against you. That is what we are seeing today. So, when we talk about coming out being very, very harmful for individuals, especially for people who are from Black and Brown communities, for people who are in the marginalized sections of societies, who are immigrants, the first thing is paramount is, of course, safety. The second thing that is paramount is how much do you want to get legislated against? Labels may work for some people, but for others, it may be the process of getting legislated against.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for adding that. Thank you, Nishida. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and people are really resonating with what you just said. You don't have to be legible for others. Beautifully put. And I would definitely agree with that. Yeah. Coming out is not going public, it is going out of your shell in a safe place, people are saying. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Thanks, everyone. We're going to transition into the next question. Switching topics here a little bit. We have a few questions around becoming a sex educator. So people are wondering what's the best way to become a sex educator, sex therapist, or sex coach? How long does this process take? Where do you go to school? Do you have recommendations around this? Jerry, what comes up for you around this?
There are actually several ways to become a sex therapist. And I also want to say there's sex therapist, sex educator, and sex coach, different tracks. And so I will talk about the way that I went through my program. I got my MSW from Clark Atlanta University, which is the first Black school of social work. It was very important for me to go to the HBCU to get my social work degree first. And I'm a little long in the tooth. So by the time I was going through my master's program, there was not a lot of sex therapy schools, unfortunately, around that time. So I went through a certification program, which there are tons around. I went to the University of Michigan. It's an 18-month program, and that was post my MSW. And so you can go, there's like tons of programs you can go through and they're usually average about 18 months. But there are now some schools like University of Michigan that offer a sex therapy, sex educator program that you can go straight through with your master's in social work.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Feel free to share any links. Holly, what's coming up for you? What would you add quickly? And then I'm going to transition. I'm also going to share a link to a resource here in the chat.
Yeah. So as a sex educator, I am somebody, I do not see clients. I purely educate the masses. I don't do any one-on-one education sessions or anything like that. But for me, my roundabout story is I thought I wanted to be a health teacher, so I went to school for that and then realized that's not what I wanted to do anymore because middle schoolers are the worst. So I went back to school to get my master's in public health. And then I focused all of my work on sexual and reproductive health because that is what I'm passionate about and what I love. And just started working in sexual and reproductive justice stuff. But I will say, whoever asked that question, whoever has that question, please talk to anybody on this panel. We need more folks in this
Mhm.
work. We need more passionate people. There is never going to be enough of us. And in my own experience, this is the most beautiful community of folks, of sex educators, and we're all here to like help each other and help new folks get into this work. So please, please reach out to all of us. We'll be more than happy to talk to you.
100%. And I just sent a link to the chat to the Pleasure Psych program. That's the program I graduated from, as well as Lacey, Wayne, a couple others in this group as well. It's how we all got connected. A program founded by Moshumi Ghost, the founder of Los Angeles Sex Therapy, also known as LAST. You can finish the program in as early as 10 weeks. There's some great perks, and there's a Pride sale right now. I think enrollment is you can enroll for the course only for like 300, or the course and support and Facebook groups and coaching groups and access to retreats for I think like 1,000 or something, which is a really great price. So can't beat it. Anyways, links in the chat. Cool. Thanks for asking. This is one similar question I want to branch off. And this person had asked, I'm not sure if they're a practitioner, but they were wondering about the development of non-monogamy and how that's integrated in sex therapy and also with bi or gay or queer attachments. So how is the development of non-monogamy integrated in sex therapy with bi, gay, or queer attachments? Yeah, Dominique, what comes up for you around this? Oh, you're muted. No problem.
Okay, so my brain is trying to wrap myself around the like way the question is asked, but I think what we're asking is how does non-monogamy make its way into sex therapy, right?
Working
Okay.
with queer folks. That's what I'm
Yeah.
getting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all these like overlaps, right? We have overlap in the queer community and the kinky community and the neurodivergent community and the polyamory community, and we have all of these people that are already trying to live their life in a way that's beyond the binary, right? That's beyond what they've been told they have to do. And sex therapy is so much about just giving people permission to be who they are, to want what they want, to like what they like, to not like what they don't like, and to find the people that consent to doing that with you, that want to do that with you. How can I communicate with people who want to relate to me about my needs and wants and boundaries? So polyamory is, or consensual non-monogamy, whatever you want to call it, it's a natural fit into sex therapy, right? Because we're going to bring up all of our shame, we're going to bring up all of our baggage, all of our attachment stuff, all of our trauma, and we're going to bring it to this other person and say, hey, I know that we've got this thing going on, but I want to bring more people into that. And that's great, right? Because now we have this place to practice attachment dynamics. We can practice jealousy and distress tolerance. We can practice, you don't have to be everything to everybody, and somebody can't be everything to you. And what an opportunity that is to get our needs met. So I don't even see the non-monogamy conversation as being different than the sex therapy conversation, which my clients will find with me, because whether you're coming to me for non-monogamy or monogamy, which I do work with, we are still figuring out how to navigate ongoing changing conversations about what I want and need and how many people I want to be included in that. So it's a natural fit. There's no difference for me.
Yeah. Jerry, what would you add to that? Yeah. Thanks, Dominique. Perfect.
I absolutely agree. The people that I work with, I say, always live outside of the traditional box. And it's usually people who come in who just kind of like have issues with things around sex. Like there's nothing really about the sex. It's around jealousy. How do we manage this? How do we add this person into our, life? Where, how do they kind of fit? So it's not really much different. You just kind of have an additional person in the room sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and those frameworks, I mean, queering relationships, queering sex, right? Queering gender, all of that, those frameworks can be applied, like Dominique said, working with monogamous folks or just straight folks, right? And that can be really powerful in just helping to deconstruct, like we're talking about, the binaries, the norms, the expectations, the conditioning, and the unlearning that can liberate us, right? Yeah, awesome. I love it. Good. Hopefully that was helpful for people who were asking about courses, certification. We're going to transition into the next question here. And This person is asking about how to avoid gendered language when dating or being intimate with a non-binary person. So, any tips for folks who might be dating someone that's non-binary and how to avoid gendered language or being intimate with them? Quill, what comes up for you? Thanks.
So this is highly like personal. I think it's really important to have a conversation with the person that you are in a relationship with and what they already know that they like and what they already know they prefer. Because some people prefer very, very different things. I think as far as intimacy goes, a lot of kind of gender neutral language that I have heard or used myself is, my love or mi amor. I have some Hispanic friends who they're really cute and use all of that, even like friend and just kind of that general, you know, intimate feelings. But it can be outside of gender. It doesn't have to be, even, beautiful or handsome. Some people like different things in that. So it really is just kind of having a conversation about what that person actually prefers and kind of
Mhm.
exploring that between you.
Exactly, developing that shared language then too. Yeah, James, what would you add to that? Thanks, Quill.
I like what Quill said. My partner is currently non-binary. Um, and I think on a general level, like or I guess in a non-sexual uh environment or situation, like I don't want to add to what Quill said because they covered it pretty well. But what I'm learning in the bedroom with my partner is learning things like is it okay to say like good girl or like good boy or anything like that? Very so even I guess there's just more communication, but you can also ask like in the sheets as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Asking the person, right? Having those conversations in advance, like you folks are saying, developing that shared common language. What terms do you like for your body parts, right? That could be really activating or triggering for some folks, right? If we're using terms that don't resonate with the person, don't align with that person anymore. So, yeah, just because you have a dick doesn't mean you can't tell someone to suck your pussy or vice versa or something else, right? Something like that. So, yeah, find your language, share it with your partner, be open. Quill, what would you add briefly before I transition? Yeah.
Yeah, just really quickly, I'm gonna plug my yes, no, maybe list. I'll send it in the
Yes.
chat
Perfect.
because that first page that I have is just general information and it has those
I
spaces
love
of
that.
like, what do you like to be called? What do you like? Language you do not want to use and that
Yes.
kind of stuff. And it's a great, just the list in general is a great facilitating conversation for anyone, either in a kink dynamic, looking into it and all of that. So I'll post that in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I'm going to hop over to the next question and then move back a little bit. But this person is asking, and I want to get to this. They really want to hear about flirting as a queer femme. Any tips? So they're queer, they're femme, they want to flirt. How do we help them out? Dominique, what comes up for you? We need some advice.
Okay. Um, Hi. Well, some of you have met me before. I'm a Libra. I'm a natural flirt. It's the way that it goes. I can't help myself. But I think that a lot of us have anxiety when it comes to like flirting as a queer femme person and like how do I approach somebody? And I think this is going to be different depending on where you fall in the spectrum, right? If you're a person who has historically and always dated women, you may have a different approach. But for a lot of us, myself included, I didn't realize that I was like a queer person until I was in my mid-20s, already married to a dude, and you get really entrenched in these like coded gender roles and norms that you don't really know are there. So you may be expecting, other genders to flirt with you the way that maybe men had flirted with you or that the other gender had flirted with you. And it's not like that, right? It's a little bit more egalitarian. You may have to approach in a different way. You may have to be more forward, and you may have to be really clear and we're always coming back to consent and communication, right? You may have to be more explicit about what you're looking for here, right? Because if I go up to a bar and I look like this and I've got my fucking my bangs on, somebody at the bar is going to be like, oh, look at this nice lady. She's complimenting my sweater. And I'm like, no, this is gay. Like, I'm doing this in a gay way. Like, I have to let you know that this is not as a friend. I don't want that from you. But you do kind of need to be more explicit about what you're looking for. I think the nose ring helps. You know, you do what you can, you signal where you can. But we can't expect this to be a dynamic where if we are all the same gender or we are not conditioned around that pursuer withdrawer dynamic.
Okay, I think she'll hop back on, but I think that was all really helpful. Yeah, so like kind of working through and unlearning like the gender norms around flirting, the consent, the communication. She even mentioned like some signaling practices, right? Like the nose ring as kind of a sign of queerness for her. I think that was all helpful. Good. All right, so we're gonna transition. We've got a few more questions here. Um, yeah, and I think where I'm gonna go, we've got about 7 minutes. I'm going to end with two questions here. And I think I want to go with thinking about this one that's submitted about really strengthening the bond with yourself, and thinking about how do you do that? And this person is asking. So, like, how do you really strengthen the bond you have with yourself? How do you connect internally to learn about your own gender evolution? You know, what does it mean for you all, in your own opinions, for people or yourselves to kind of live beyond these labels? What challenges can come with that choice, and also what else might be able to come with that choice? So I know there's a lot of questions in there, but kind of taking some time to think about this, and also anyone in the chat that might want to respond to this as well. So really thinking about, um, how do you strengthen the bond with yourself? How do you get to know who you are? What does it mean to live beyond these labels? What challenges come with that choice, and what else might come with it as well? Yeah, Holly, what comes up for you? Thanks.
For me, age. Um, I think getting older and not giving a damn what anybody thinks anymore. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And if you don't like who I am, that's a loss for you, not for me. You miss out on getting to know the amazing person that is who I am. Um, but that takes a lot of work. And I say this like so confident right now, but I will tell you this is an everyday practice for me. As I have not mastered it. So I hope like no one got excited and started taking notes on how to master this, because I don't think it's something you ever master, but I don't think that's the goal. Because you should always be changing and evolving and growing and trying to be the best version of yourself from day to day to day. So that if you're like, this, I finally figured out how to be happy with me and how to like love me and accept me. Well, tomorrow is a different version of you. Tomorrow's a different day. And, you know, we may have to do that. And especially right now, it's really hard. It's really hard to love and accept yourself every day, when you have people who have decision-making powers telling you that you should not love yourself. Um, and it gets hard to do that. But then I look at events like this, you know, where so many people are here and so many people are asking such beautiful questions. And I go to Pride events and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like they're just very loud, but they're not very many. There's not many of them. They are just so loud. And so it's a constant reminder to bring out my Leo energy and just be louder all the time. Like I'm very loud and obnoxious about who I am. And I'm going to continue to do that. And it's just a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so embracing that process of self-discovery, showing yourself that radical self-compassion and acceptance along the way, practicing self-affirmation and validation, which makes it easier to say fuck you to anyone else who doesn't accept you. Yeah, and just kind of knowing that it can change and accepting that part of it as well. Um, yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks for adding that. Yeah, Jerry, what's coming up for you here? Thanks.
I would always say lean into curiosity. Like, why do I like the things that I like? Where did that come from? Who taught me that? And then challenge the things that you don't necessarily feel connected to. And I think once you learn to love yourself more, you start to be around people who love you for you.
Yeah, and find your people too. Like it's easier once you reach that point of acceptance and love to then know who your people are and to find them too. Yeah. Quill, what would you add to this? Thanks. Thanks, Jerry.
I think that community is a really big part of this. Again, coming from a background of being in a very like small cultish environment, I didn't have anyone that really understood me. And it took a little bit to kind of find that. I was very, very lucky to be able to get, into a friend group that had queer people in it, and it opened my world, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think, just this is still something that I am learning for sure, and just trying to kind of love myself for who I am. I think being gender fluid as well, can be very confusing. And it's important to just kind of see yourself as you are without judgment, kind of take a step back and look at, kind of what you're feeling and, you know, how you want to express yourself, like I said earlier, with like find what gives you euphoria, find what makes you feel like yourself, find what makes you feel happy, whether that's in your sexuality, your relationship style, anything like that. It's just be in tune with yourself, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Nishita, final comment, if you can make it about 20 seconds or so, and we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah, I lean into the Indian aesthetics theories from second century, and I look into not just visual aesthetics, music, sound, hearing. What does this feel like? What does this fabric feel like for you when you wear it? What does that lipstick color feel like for you when you actually put it on your lips? How does that eyeliner on you feel like? What does that one bindi in the center of the forehead remind you of? How does your hair feel like for you today? So lean into engaging with aesthetics, engage with the dance in front of you, engage with the music that you're hearing, engage with the smell and the taste buds and everything to the utmost level. And that's how you can probe. I mean, we have so many senses. We have 33 senses in our body. Engage with all of them.
I love it. Yeah, that's beautiful too. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and I'll leave you folks with one quote. I think last year we ended with Bill Hooks as well, and she said, "Queer is not about who you're having sex with, but about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live." Right? So really hopefully today what we celebrated here was thinking about sex and gender and identity beyond the binary, right? As a way of inventing and creating a space for yourself, of asserting your identity, thriving despite societal pressures and marginalizations, as we've discussed, and really thinking about your identity and sexuality and gender as resistance, as self expression and liberation, and not necessarily or merely a descriptor of your sexual behavior. So, thank you so much to everyone who was here. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, and your time with us. For everyone that joins us every month, thanks again for being here. New guests, thank you for being here. Next month, you can join us again on the third Tuesday of July. So it'll be Tuesday, July 21st. We'll be delving into modern love and relationship structures. We'll be redefining partnership beyond monogamy, exploring non-monogamy, situationships, and all different types of relationship styles, structures, and constellations. What works, what might be challenging for folks along that journey, and what it might take to build something aligned in today's world. So thanks again, panelists. If you're able to stick around for a couple minutes to kind of wrap up and just debrief, feel free. If you have to sign off, that's okay too. Guests, feel free to share a word that describes how you're feeling, something you learned, something you enjoyed. But again, thank you so much for being here, and we hope to see you next month. Until next time. Happy Pride, everybody. Yeah.
Happy Pride. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here. All right, we'll give everyone a minute to log off. Do any of you have to hop off? Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, David. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks, Carolina. Thanks, Keyleth. Thanks, Andres. Totally enlightened. That's a good one. Thanks, David. Thanks, Chaya. All right. Cool. Let me just, I'm going to stop recording here.